There's no podcast that could do justice to a movie which I consider Hitchcock's third best movie, in my personal opinion, behind Lifeboat and Rear Window. I don't think Vertigo is as good as this movie. But when I first saw Strangers on a Train, I said to myself, well, we have a very interesting case here of a homosexual in real life who's playing straight, and a straight man in regular life who's playing what I call obsessive gay. So it can only be Strangers on a Train, one of the most wacky, dark comedy movies you'll ever see, because there's strong overtones of all type of movies, thrillers, film noirs, dark comedies, kind of, revenge movies. Now, it came out in 1951. It was only nominated for one Oscar. It was cinematography. I don't know what happened there. It was produced and directed by the great Alfred Hitchcock, and based on a 1950 novel, Strangers on a Train, by Patricia Highsmith. It was shot in late 50 and released by Warner Brothers in June 51, starring Farley Granger, Ruth Roman, and Robert Walker. The story concerns two strangers. Well, one person is not a stranger to the other, who meet on a train, one of whom is a psychopath homosexual who suggested that he exchange murders so that neither will be caught. The film initially received mixed reviews, but has since been regarded much more favorably. In 2021, the film was selected for preservation in the U.S. National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, aesthetically significant. Now, what really stands out for me, ladies and gentlemen, although Farley Granger is a great actor, the late Robert Walker Senior, hits it out of the park. Now, the plot of this is very, very direct, because it deals with everything from tennis to betrayed love. Two big topics in the 1950s. In this one, amateur tennis star Guy Haynes wants to divorce his promiscuous wife Miriam so he can marry Ann Morton, the daughter of a U.S. senator. On a train, wealthy, smooth-talking psychopath Bruno Anthony recognizes Haynes, and he does recognize him from a romantic standpoint as well, and reveals his idea for a murder scheme. Two strangers meet and swap murders, crisscross. Bruno suggests he killed Miriam, and Guy killed Bruno's hated father. Each will murder a stranger with no apparent motive, so neither will be suspected. Guy humors Bruno by pretending to find his idea amusing, but is so eager to get away from him that he leaves behind his engraved cigarette lighter, which plays a big factor in the plot of the movie. Now, when Guy meets with Miriam, who's pregnant by someone else, at a workplace in Metcalfe, their hometown, Miriam informs Guy that she no longer wants to end her marriage. She threatens to claim that he's the father in order to thwart any divorce attempt. This is before DNA, of course. That evening, Bruno follows Miriam to an amusement park and strangles her while Guy is on the train to Washington. When Guy arrives home, Bruno informs him Miriam is dead and insists that he must now honor their deal. Now, the murder occurs after Miriam is hanging out with two possible suitors. We don't know if she's having sex with either one of them or is one of the father of her child. It's not really done. But Guy basically is on the phone and tells, Anne he wants to strangle her. What a coincidence. Now, Guy goes to the Morton's home where Anne's father informs Guy that his wife has been murdered. Anne's sister Barbara says that the police would think that Guy is the murderer since he has a motive. She was pretty smart. She was Alfred Hitchcock's daughter in real life. The police question Guy, but cannot confirm his alibi. A Professor Guy met on the train was so drunk that he cannot remember their encounter. The police assign an escort to watch him. Now, Bruno follows Guy around Washington and introduces him to Anne and appears at a party at Senator Morton's house. To amuse another guest, Bruno playfully demonstrates how to strangle a woman. His gaze falls upon Barbara, whose appearance resembles Miriam's. This triggers a flashback. Bruno compulsively squeezes the woman's neck, and other guests intervene to stop him from strangling her to death. Barbara tells Anne that Bruno is looking her while strangling the other woman, and Anne realizes Barbara's resemblance to Miriam. Her suspicions aroused. Anne confronts Guy, who tells her the truth about Bruno's scheme. Now, Bruno sends Guy a package containing a pistol, a house key, and a map showing the location of their father's bedroom. Guy creeps into Bruno's father's room to warn him of his son's murderous intentions, but instead finds Bruno thinking twice that they are waiting for him. Guy tries to persuade Bruno to seek psychiatric help, but Bruno threatens to punish Guy for breaking their deal. When Anne visits Bruno's home and tries to explain to his befuddled mother that his son is a murderer, Bruno mentions Guy's missing cigarette lighter to Anne and claims that Guy asked him to search the murder site for it. Guy infers that Bruno intends to plant it at the scene of the murder and incriminate him. After winning a tennis match, Guy evades the police escort and heads for the amusement park to stop Bruno. Now, before this big scene comes about, Bruno loses it in a drain. And there's a long scene, about 2 or 3 minutes, of him trying to get it back. And he does. Now, when Bruno arrives at the amusement park, a carnival worker recognizes him from the night of the murder. He informs the police, who thinks he's recognized Guy. After Guy arrives, he and Bruno fight in the park's carousel. Believing that Guy is trying to escape, a police officer shoots at him, but instead kills the carousel operator, causing the carousel to spin out of control. A carnival worker crawls underneath it and applies the brakes too abruptly, causing the carousel to spin off its support, trapping and mortally injured Bruno underneath. The worker who called the police tells him that Bruno, not Guy, is the one he remembers seeing the night of the murder. As Bruno dies, his fingers unclenched and reveals Guy's lighter in his hand. Realizing that Guy is not the murderer, the police ask him to come to the station to tie up loose ends. Sometime later, another stranger on a train attempts to strike up a conversation with Guy in the same way as Bruno did, and Guy and Anne coldly walk away from him. Now, what Robert Walker does with his character, at first, you don't expect he has a homosexual or what they call a repressed homosexual crush on Guy Haynes. Now, I think the reference here is he's basically, Hitchcock is playing a card saying some sports performers at the time would have people of not sound mind to gain homosexual crushes on them. Hockey players, football players, tennis players. So when you meet on the train, it's more a seduction. He wants to know him better and maybe get in his pants to figure out what he's really, how big his tennis racket is, as we like to say. But I think Patricia Hitchcock is the unheralded of the piece, because she's the voice of reason. Because when Marion gets knocked off, she's not saying, "Oh, I'm sorry for your loss." And, she's quite the slut in so many words. But Casey Rogers, who plays Miriam, boys, oh boys, I never thought to be a femme fatale with granny glasses. She, like I said, she was going to put Guy into deep shit. So in a lot of ways, the Granger's character owes a lot to Bruno for knocking her off. Now, initially, he wanted William Holden for the Guy Haynes role, which was complete be a failure. Holden declined, said he would have been all wrong, too sturdy, too put off by Bruno, wrote critic Roger Ebert. Granger is softer and more elusive, more convincing as he tries to slip out of Bruno's conversational web instead of flatly rejecting him, because he plays an athlete and he has to be kind to his fans. Now, Warner Brothers wanted their own stars already under contract, cast whenever possible. In the casting of Ann Morton, who was terrible in the movie, Jack Warner got what he wanted when he signed Ruth Roman to the project over Hitchcock's objections. Like I said, she's distracting. She's too pretty for this type of movie. The director found her bristling and lacking of sex appeal and said that she had been foisted upon him. She's just a nice-looking, B actress. Perhaps it was the circumstance of forced casting, but Roman became the target of Hitchcock's scorn throughout the production, almost like happened with Vera Miles. Granger described Hitchcock's attitude towards Roman as disinterest in the actress, and he said he saw Hitchcock treat Edith Evanson the same way on the set of Rope. He had to have one person each film he could harass, Granger said. Now, Casey Rogers, credited as Laura Elliott, noted she had a perfect vision at the time the movie was made, but Hitchcock insisted she wore the character's thick eyeglasses, even in long shots when regular glass lenses would have been undetectable. Rogers was effectively blind with the glasses on, so she needed to be guided by the other actors. Now, the movie itself did very well at the box office. It only cost a little bit of $1 million to make, 1.6, made $7 million. Now, this was banned in numerous jurisdictions in Canada because the Catholic Church, who was owning a lot of the rights to censorship, basically banned the movie for several reasons. This was a true story, because the main female actress that was murdered was pregnant by another man. That even referred to was like a cardinal sin, no pun intended. And the fact was that the Farley Granger character literally wanted to murder her, and she ends up murdered. So it was basically another commandment broken. Death to your enemies or whatever, like, greed or whatever, the deadly sins. But the production itself took only a few months, and what was quite interesting, the music in this Dimitri Tomkin did a really good job, and that was a good choice by Jack Warner. Now, he had previous experience on Shadow of a Doubt, and he would score 2 more consecutive Hitchcock films, but the director and composer simply never developed much of a kinship. And Hitchcock films are not Tomkin's best, but for me it really works. Now, there's contrasting music throughout the film, which I think works. Now, the promotion and release. It was scheduled for early summer, and the studio press agents swung into high gear early in 51. Now, Hitchcock prominently was photographed many times over the years, strangling various actresses and other women. Some one-handed, others two. Found himself in front of the camera with his fingers on the neck of a bust of his daughter Patricia. Then the photo found its way into newspapers worldwide. He was also photographed handing the letter L to strangers on the official studio poster of the film, thus changing the word "The Stranglers" on our train, which would have gave away the movie, of course. Now, the premiered on March 5th, 51 at Huntington Park Theatre with Jack Warner and various luminaries there, and it won a prize for the Screen Directors Guild. Official premiere July 3rd, marking the reopening of the extensionally remodeled Strand Theatre at the Warner Theatre in a dozen cities around the country. Hitchcock made personal appearances in most of them, and was often accompanied by his talented daughter. Now, some audience feedback arriving in Jack Warner's evidence condemned the film for a sordid story, while just as many others were favorable. Of greater interest to Warner was the box office take, and the receipts soon told a true story. Strangers on a Train was a success, and Hitchcock was pronounced at the top of his form as the master of the dark, melodramatic suspense thriller. But Jack Warner put a lot of pressure on him on this movie, ladies and gentlemen. Now, there's a lot of political subtext with this, including the first rumblings with the trial of the Hollywood 10, the so-called Red Scare, of course, was Gatherick's theme in 1950. Now, the treatment writer Cook used Guy to make a film, a parable quite defined of the Cold War hysteria sweeping America. That hysteria was targeting homosexuals along with communist enemies of the state. The U.S. Senate was busy investigating the submission that moral perverts in the government were also undermining national security, going so far as to commission a study employment of homosexuals and other sex perverts in government. Now, Carringer had argued that the film was crucially shaped by the congressional inquiries, making Guy the stand-in for victims of the homophobic climate. I don't see that in a way, ladies and gentlemen, because even though Granger was gay in real life, Guy is the all-American stereotype, an athletic, unassuming despite his fame, conservatively dressed, and he is a man of indeterminate sexual identity, found in circumstances making vulnerable to being compromised. Hitchcock would have drawn gay characters so sharply that suddenly in Rope in 48, drafted the left-leaning Cook, especially because he was comfortable with sexually ambiguous characters. Now, could Guy be bisexual? That's the question. I don't think so. I think he liked the attraction he would give to both sexes, but was he practicing or a possible bisexual or homosexual? No. Even though in real life Granger played it like that, I didn't see this in here because he's basically saying himself, circumstances are like this. You can meet somebody on a train and never see them again, or meet that person on a train and be friends for life. That's what it's trying to say with this. No matter if Guy was going to live another 50 years, he would never forget Bruno, and Bruno is going to be his head the rest of his life. Now, there is slight differences from the novel, and especially the merry-go-round thing is not in the book, but it's taken from the climax of Edmund Crispin's 46 novel, The Moving Toy Shop. All the major elements of the scene, the two men struggling, the accidentally shot attendant, the out-of-control merry-go-round, the crawling under moving merry-go-round to disable it, are present in Crispin's account. They receive no screen credit for it. Now, Bosley Crossley of the New York Times gave it the weirdest review, saying that he criticized the movie, saying Mr. Hitchcock again is tossing a crazy murder story in the air and trying to con us into thinking that would stand up without support. Perhaps there were those in the audience who will likewise be terrified by the villain's darkly menacing warnings and by Mr. Hitchcock's sleeky, melodramatic tricks. Now, Leslie Hallwell felt that Hitchcock was at his best, but called the story unsatisfactory. Now, modern reviews have been numerously positive in many ways. On Rotten Tomatoes has an approval rating of 98%, based on reviews of 52 critics, with an average rating of 8.8. Roger Ebert, I think, had the greatest review, call it the first real Ray thriller, and he considers one of Hitchcock's 5 best films. I have a top 3 anyway. Now, the only problem I have with the movie, and I hope you take it the right way, the black and white print that was taken from has not really in high def. It's sort of a little bit grainy, and it takes away from some of the aspects. But Farley Granger and Robert Walker, for modern film noir couples, they are my top 10. We're talking film noir couples because you got Joseph Cotton and the people like Glenn Ford and these co-stars. But of the top 10 film noir couples, they're a top 10. It just happens one's in love with the other or obsessed with the other. But it's put it this way: if you're a gay man watching Strangers on a Train for the first time, you're saying with himself, did he really think like that in 1951? Like, it's a movie ahead of its time. Like, something for the early 70s, based in the 50s, would be a lot better. I think there should be a remake of this in a lot of ways. You could get Ian McKellen as a co-star. You can get maybe 2 strong British actors to do it and place into that 1950s, maybe the British, the tennis genre at the time. Like I said, Hitchcock, every scene of this is important. I've watched it over maybe 300 times, and every time I see the movie, it's something new. And it's a top 10 movie on my all-time list because when I was a kid, I think I was 8 years old when I saw Strangers on a Train for the first time, in French, by the way. And I went to my dad and I said, "Dad, is that a gay movie?" Well, he said, "Yeah, yes and no." He said, "You'll have to watch it again." So I watched it in English. And for a while, I thought Alfred Hitchcock's daughter, the actress in the movie, the character, was a lesbian. Don't ask me why. I just got those vibes. Pretty strange. Or like a bisexual or an asexual. Like I don't think she was a heterosexual or played in the movie. So again, I give this 5 stars out of 5. As we like to say, 5 crisscrosses out of 5. So ladies and gentlemen, you're a fan of Strangers on a Train. You're part of the crew. If you don't like it, well, I don't know what you need from Hitchcock. But see, Rear Window was distracting with Grace Kelly being so nice looking. She was luminous. Vertigo is just a boring piece of shit. I don't know why people think it's a great movie. It's not a great movie. But Strangers on a Train gives you more pound for pound in black and white. This could never be a color movie. It's much better in black and white. Have a good one. Don't forget, give us a like, comment, subscribe, and share.